that went after resources and labor and markets and everything, but they kept everything in-house. That ultimately generated the World Wars and World War II. At the end of the war, the Americans proposed that they would use their Navy so that everyone could go anywhere at any time and interface with any market, partner with any foreign country, participate in any supply chain, and the United States would open its market if in exchange everyone would line up shoulder to shoulder, not behind us or with us, but in front of us to absorb any ammo that happened to come in from the Soviet Union. We purchased an alliance to fight the Cold War. That's globalization. It was always a security plan for the Americans, not an economic one. And so in the last 7 elections since the Cold War ended, we've elected more and more isolationist and populist presidents, and Biden is the culmination of that. He is more populist and he is more or less of a globalist than even Trump was. This isn't an aberration, this is a trend. Second, depopulation. Normally you have a lot of babies and then fewer children, fewer teenagers, fewer young adults, fewer mature adults, and fewer retirees. Normally, if you stack it all up, you get a pyramid. Well, when the United States allowed global trade, everyone could access all the capital and technologies and resources of the world. So the whole world started to industrialize at a breakneck pace. And when you industrialize, you move to town. You do this for 75 years. And we now have a good chunk of the world, the advanced world, that has more people in their 60s than their 50s, than their 40s, than their 30s, than their 10s, and so on. And even in the developing world, that process is well past the point of no return because it happened even faster in places like Brazil or India. So we've always known that the 2020s were the decade when we have a demographic bust globally that is irreparable and irrecoverable. This was always coming. It's been coming ever since the Gen X was born, because everywhere in the world, Gen Xers are smaller than the boomers, and in most of the world, the millennials are even smaller, and so on. You add depopulation to deglobalization, and the very future of trade, period, has to change. The concept of global complex supply chains goes away. The idea of a single price for oil goes away. The idea that we can feed 8 billion people goes away. And we are... Trump sped things up a little bit. Biden sped them up more. COVID really did a number on it. And the Ukraine war is a hard stop. So the old era is already gone. But this 70-year period we've been in, where it almost seems like hyper-growth and hyper-technological advancement, because it has been that way, that stops now. Tech development requires scads of young workers who are very bright, the ability to connect them all, and scads of capital to pay for the research, the operationalization, and the implementation. Once the baby boomers retire, the money goes away. And as deglobalization breaks, those connections among workforces goes away. So Silicon Valley will still be there, but it won't have the global network that it's used to. So everything is going to slow down. Ukraine gets all of its energy from Russia. And we're going to see 4 to 5 million barrels a day of Russian crude go offline later this year, which means there is not enough for global consumption to continue in its current form. Even if I believed in EVs hugely, the technology isn't far enough along for it to be applied to the poorer locations of the world. So places that depend upon international trade to get the building blocks of modern society, oil, natural gas, copper, iron ore, and so on. We're entering a period of abject shortage as global trade links break down. So there are huge portions of the world, the country I am bar none most concerned about is China, that simply aren't going to have access to the materials that they need to continue in a modern industrialized lifestyle. And if you start to deindustrialize, cities are a death trap. And so you're going to see the cities in these areas to a degree empty so that people can go back to at least somewhere where they can eat. The leading wave was always going to be one of two sectors, energy because it's so sensitive to disruptions and demand is inelastic. And we're on the leading edge of seeing that. We haven't gotten there quite yet. I'm expecting the majority of Russian oil to just fall off the market within the next couple of months. And we're in the Western Hemisphere, which is largely, maybe immune's not the right word, but certainly heavily resistant and atypical compared to the Eastern Hemisphere in terms of population structures and trade patterns and resource access. So the United States will have some bumps on the way, but 5 years from now, we're going to be in a better place than we are now with a more stable supply chain system. Getting from here to there, it'll be awkward at times. The primary source of income for East Asia is manufacturing. And a lot of that's going to go away because the East Asian countries don't have sufficient numbers of 20-somethings and 30-somethings and early 40-somethings that people consume to buy what they produce. So when those supply chains relocate, there's nothing left. There's no oil. The agricultural options are very thin. The Chinese import 85% of their oil. 85% of that comes from the Persian Gulf, and the United States is no longer there to keep the lines open. They import